Singapore is making a huge move that's set to change the game for climate reporting, not just locally, but across Asia. So if you've got any investments in the region, you're going to want to pay close attention. We're about to break down exactly what these new rules are, who they're going to affect, and most importantly, what it all means for your money.
So let's start with the big one. Is your portfolio really ready for climate change? For way too long, trying to figure out if a company was genuinely prepared has been, well, a bit of a guessing game. But that's all about to change. These new rules are designed to give investors like you a much clearer view of which companies are actually ready for what's coming.
This really gets to the heart of why this is happening. The market is just tired of vague promises and glossy reports that don't say much. What investors want now is cold, hard data. We're talking standardized, reliable information that tells the real story about climate risks. We are moving from an era of just talk to an era of proof.
Okay, so what exactly are these new standards? Well, Singapore is adopting the global guidelines from the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB. We're talking specifically about two things called IFRS S1 and S2. Now, IFRS just stands for International Financial Reporting Standards. The best way to think about it is that we're creating a new common language for talking about climate impact, so everyone everywhere can be on the same page.
Now, climate risk isn't just about storms and heat waves. The new rules force companies to think about two very different kinds of risk. First, you've got the physical risks. That's the stuff we see on the news, right? Floods, fires, that sort of thing. But just as important are the transition risks. These are the financial hits that can come from the shift to a greener economy. Think new carbon taxes, disruptive new technologies, or even just customers choosing more sustainable brands. Companies now have to be upfront about both.
So, the whole reporting system is built on 4 core ideas, or pillars. It all starts with governance. Basically, who at the very top is in charge of this? Then it's about strategy. How is climate change actually affecting our long-term plans? Third is risk management. How are we finding and dealing with these risks? And finally, it all comes down to metrics and targets, the actual numbers. How do we measure what we're doing, and how do we know if we're making progress?
And that leads us to maybe the most important part of all of this, measuring greenhouse gas emissions. It sounds complicated, I know, but the standards make it a lot simpler by breaking emissions down into 3 categories, which they call scopes. And to make this super easy to get, let's use a simple analogy.
Imagine a local pizza shop. Scope 1 emissions are the pollution they create themselves, from stuff they own and control. So we're talking about the gas burning in their pizza oven or the exhaust coming out of their own delivery scooters. It's the emissions happening right there on site. Pretty simple, right?
All right, now for Scope 2. This is about the energy the pizza shop buys. They aren't running a power plant in their back room, but the electricity they use to run their lights and fridges comes from one. Scope 2 is all about accounting for the emissions from the power they purchase to run their business.
And this is the big one. Scope 3 covers basically everything else up and down the company's entire value chain. For our pizza shop, that means the emissions from the farm that grew the tomatoes, the factory that made the cheese, the trucks that delivered the flour, and even what happens to the pizza box after you throw it away. It's the whole shebang, their entire carbon footprint from start to finish.
Okay, so who actually has to do all this reporting, and when do they have to start? Well, it's not happening all at once. The rollout is being done in phases, and different types of companies have different rules to follow. So, Singapore's regulators have basically split all the publicly listed companies into 3 groups. The first group is the big players, the companies that make up the main stock market index, the STI. The second group is other large companies worth over $1 billion Singapore dollars. And the third group is, well, everybody else.
Now, this table really lays it all out. Here's the key thing to notice. Starting in 2025, all listed companies have to start reporting their Scope 1 and 2 emissions. But, as you can see, the biggest companies, those STI constituents, have much tougher rules. They have to start reporting on that massive Scope 3 category by 2026. The other companies get a bit more time to get everything in order.
And like I said, this isn't some overnight change. The whole thing is being phased in gradually to give everyone time to adjust. Let's look at the key dates you need to know.
So the starting gun fires in 2025. That's when every listed company begins reporting Scope 1 and 2. A year later, in 2026, the biggest companies have to add their Scope 3 data. Then in 2028, the next tier of large companies joins in with full reporting. And by 2030, every single listed company will be on board. It's a very clear, step-by-step plan.
So let's bring it all home.
What does all this actually mean? After all the details and deadlines, why should you, as an investor or just someone who's curious, really care about any of this?
One thing the regulators have made really clear is that they see this as a journey, not just flipping a switch. This whole phased-in timeline is designed to give companies the time they need to build the skills and systems to do this right. The goal is to move steadily towards total transparency.
For you, the investor, these changes are a complete game changer. For the first time, you're going to have standardized data. That means you can make real apples-to-apples comparisons between companies. You'll be able to properly judge long-term risks, spot hidden dangers, and crucially, you'll be able to separate the companies that are actually doing the work from those that are just good at talking about it. This is a massive leap forward for making smarter investment decisions, and it really cements Singapore's role as a hub for sustainable finance.
And that brings us to our final thought. These new rules are going to bring a ton of transparency. But with transparency comes accountability. Once all this data is out in the open, there's really no place for companies to hide. So the big question is, are they really ready for the story their numbers are about to tell?